us as an expert in the regulatory reporting solutions to share some insights of reporting in XBRL in practice. Thank you all for joining, and it's a pleasure to host you today. Before we proceed and wait for some latecomers, I would like to note that today's session is being recorded, and also we welcome addressing your questions on the chat function, and we will answer them at the end of the session. So the topic of today's discussion is diving into XBRL in the UK and managing your data quality. And together we will look at the upcoming changes within the data collection in the UK, namely moving of all statistics reporting to a single reporting standard, importance of a common reporting standard, the current use of XBRL reporting format in the UK, and possible challenges for the filers going forward. And before we start, I would like to give you a brief introduction of who we are. For more than 15 years, Business Reporting Advisory Group has been working with regulators and supervisors around the world, implementing standards for more transparent and digitized data flows, and in particular in financial sector. Our current focus is on European Union and the UK, where thanks to our projects supporting regulators, we're this one step closer in better understanding of regulatory reporting requirements. And I'm very proud to say that our team has actively contributed, providing the know-how to setting data standards. For example, as co-authors of the data point methodology, or DPM, used by the European Banking Authority and now also recognized as an ISO standard. And I'm passing over to Michał to tell more about our company's focus and projects. Michał, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Irina. So we operate in the triangle between the data, policy, and technology. In your context, you can imagine the situation like changes to the Basel Accord, when there is a new release of Basel Accord and it has to be implemented in your national law. Then we are talking here about the policies. Of course, this is not only the policy for you, because in the end, you need to provide the data. So the actual data about the capital adequacy is provided as this data and metadata part of the triangle. And the technology is, for instance, the technical format to provide the data, to validate the data, to store it, to analyze it. The foundation for all of what we are doing here is the trust. And this trust is stemming from a number of different factors, like using the proven best practices, using the open standards, and constructive communication with authorities that you can see, for instance, as a participation, and sometimes also leading the public working drafts discussion with a number of different authorities. As Irina mentioned, we have conducted a number of projects in different fields across a number of different jurisdictions. We were doing the projects for all the ESAs, European Banking Authority, EIOPA, ESMA, also for the European Commission, for the European Central Bank, also for the IFRS Foundation. So you can see how large these groups of entities for whom we were doing the projects is. But for the sake of today's presentation, I would like to focus only on one particular project. I would like to focus on the project that we have conducted for the Bank of Spain, where the banks in Spain were in quite similar situation comparing to where you are right now. So in the past, there were a number of different reporting requirements in their jurisdiction, and they had to separately report the information about the credit register, separately information about the EBA kind of information like FINREP and COREP, separately the national extension for the solo reporting of IFRSs, and also the statistical data. When we have finalized the project, this entire process was very streamlined, and they were applying a consistent single set of definitions across a number of those different reports. And in fact, all of those were reflected in the XBRL taxonomy. So this project is perceived as a quite large success in the Spanish jurisdiction. What we are basing on here, especially in today's presentation, is the importance of the common data standards. Probably you are already familiar with the huge number of standards and formats that even your own banks need to use and apply in the context of reporting. When we have seen a number of projects around the globe, the best score that we have noticed in case of the reporting from the commercial bank to the central bank was more than 8 different reporting channels and 5 different reporting standards or formats. So, of course, from the long-term perspective, this is, simply speaking, very inefficient solution. Our practice proven that in the end, what are the common standards here are the important ones that are SDMX, XBRL, also based on the DPM methodology, and ISO 20022. I would not like to focus today on ISO 20022 because this is very critical standard, but it is rather for the transactional kind of reporting. For the aggregated ones in the EU, we are applying mostly to SDMX and XBRL, where the SDMX, in fact, it is applicable mostly, not even in the reporting, but rather within in the area of data sharing between the authorities. And the recognition of the standards for the commercial institutions is not that high. So that was a very natural way to go for the Bank of England to introduce the XBRL kind of an approach and the DPM kind of approach also for the statistical area that we are witnessing right now, and that we will have a lot of interesting facts for you to provide during today's conversation. But what I would like to mention also for this slide is actually the benefits that potentially you can achieve when from this switch to XBRL in context of the context of the statistical data. First of all, of course, this is the streamlining of reporting process. And importantly, in this case, what you should already notice is that the dictionaries and the definitions of concepts reflected in the XBRL taxonomy provided by the bank, they already reflect not only statistical terms, but also the supervisory terms, not only the ones stemming from the EBA, but also those that the Bank of England had to add to the concepts, to these definitions, taking into consideration purely national implementation of those models for the supervisory reporting. On top of that, and in very consistent manner, the statistical data model was provided. So what you will see quite soon in this context will be the cost efficiency for reporting, and of course, in the end, all the benefits from having a single format to report of this data, of having a single metadata to deal with this data, all of those potential you will see also in the reality of your day-to-day businesses. So thank you, Irina. The floor is back yours.
Thank you, Michał. Thank you for the insight. And to give a little background here, back in November last year, it was announced that Data and Statistics Division is planning to move the collection of statistical data to the Bank of England's Electronic Data Submission Portal, or BEADS, and regulator confirmed moving the reporting format from XML to XBRL. And also in February, the Bank of England published its Transforming Data Collection Plan, the plan to transform the bank's ability to collect data going forward. And a lot of discussions arise on this topic indeed, so I'll just brief through the main points. The main goals of transformation plan were set firstly, to improve data collection processes. Secondly, to develop and improve the digital regulatory reporting, or how technology could transform how the data collection process works, with benefit for both the regulator and industry. And finally, to build a more efficient and effective reporting process. So what is more efficient data collection? And referring to the recent speech by Gareth Ramsey, we can say that efficient data collection is the one that puts less burden on the industry and increases the effectiveness of the process. So to begin the data collection transformation journey, the regulator pointed out the following main steps: to develop common data standards, to improve and modernize reporting instructions, and to integrate reporting processes. And developing common data standards are being the focus here. Micha provided an overview of international experiences with data standards applicable for big data analysis and the importance of the common data standard in financial sector. And the move to a single reporting format would be first little but yet very important step in this long-term journey. Moving to the next slide. A quick look at the current coverage for XBRL in Bank of England's reporting. So data point models and XBRL taxonomies were released for banking and insurance. So banks, building societies, investment firms, credit unions, insurers are all reporting in XBRL. Version 1.2.0 public working draft of the statistics taxonomy as an update to support the collection of statistical data which was previously collected in XML format was released earlier in April. And just this Monday, the Bank of England published second version of public working draft of the 1.2.0 taxonomy. The second public working draft publication basically incorporates comments received during the first feedback window and offers another opportunity to provide feedback by 11th of June. So the market participants are welcome to provide their comments on the public working draft second version. And we're expecting the final version of the taxonomy and data point model to be published in late July, early August. And after that, all statistics reporting will be covered by XBRL. Based on second public working draft, what we can expect: 112 annotated templates, over 8,000 data points. That means that larger and more complex firms can expect to report a lot more data, and 886 validation rules. And we will show you that in a minute. The data point model is an extension of the European Banking Authority's data point model, so filings will be subject to the EBA filing rules. So we observe certain convergence between the UK and EU regulations here, as well as in other areas. For example, the upcoming IFPR regime for investment firms, which is now actually being discussed. So with changing reporting landscape, the question which may arise: what banks as the main statistics filers can expect here? Will there be any challenges? And for sure, when we speak about DPM and XBRL, the focus will be on data quality. And accessing good quality data on the market is vital for both the regulators and for market participants. So how can we prepare for XBRL transformation? Moving additionally all statistics reporting to a single format means that firms will need to adjust their systems and processes to collect, store, and validate large amounts of data. Today, really massive volumes of data are stored and provided by financial institutions, and technological changes in particular, they increase the volumes of data produced and subsequently the demand the regulator puts on the data. And what we observe today is using massive data sets, more complex techniques in reporting processes, and eventually more challenges for firms to send and submit this data. So it's data quality and data validation that are in the focus due to high quality checks on submissions to BEADS. So let's have a closer look at validation part, the last mile of reporting process. Though the second version of public working draft 1.2.0 will not be used for reporting, we have embedded this taxonomy into our reporting tool Atomy Particles for demonstration purposes for today's discussion. And since Business Reporting Advisory Group will support all the changes the Bank of England might put out for XBRL reporting, we're, let's say, hands-on all the upcoming developments. So once the final taxonomy is published, we will have it ready in our toolkit. And I will kindly ask my colleague Dominic to show you how the process of report creation and validation will look like for filers in statistics. And before Dominic is launching the tool, just a quick note on Atomy Particles. This is one of BRAG's Atomy Platform solutions created for filers in particular. So we created it based on our experience working with regulators and co-creating taxonomies and knowing exactly how the regulator defines reporting rules and how they want filers to report. So Atomy Particles makes this reporting process for financial institutions as easy and reliable as possible because it's focused on two main things: data quality assurance and this last mile of reporting process or accurate validation against regulators' requirements, and finally, successful submission. Dominic, over to you.
Thank you very much. I hope that you can see my screen. Irina, could you confirm? Yes, perfect. This is our solution for XBRL reporting Atomy Particles. This is the log screen of the Atomy Particles, and when you start the application, you are presented as a user with all the available packages for your license. So I have a couple of here from the Bank of England, but for the presentation perspective, I will go with the Bank of England statistics, and I have to choose the container, which is the database of the validations. I'm good to go for creation the report. So adding some necessary information, and the report is ready to be filled with data. As you can see, this is the Bank of England statistics with all the forms, and I will start with putting some data points just to show you how the validations work in Atomy Particles. Because these validations are really important, as Irina mentioned before. There's over 800 validations introduced in this model. So these are the validations. So the data checks created by the Bank of England, and Atomy Particles checks this data against the validations defined by the regulator. And if I double click on, let's say, this validation, I am presented with the error that was found within the data I reported. And the solution highlights the cells involved in this error. I'm presented also with the mathematical formula, location of these cells. So this is 40 and 10. So this is 40 and 10. And this 5,000 is 90 and 10. Also, left side value, right side value. This really, which makes it really easy to correct this error. If I type 5,000 and save the data, this error, when I validate it again, should disappear, and it's gone. Of course, some users prefer to work in Excels. So we gave them the opportunity to work in Excels, and there's possibility to export all the errors found in the report to one Excel sheet. And basically, I have the same information here as in Atomy Particles. So the validation code, error message, expression, and so on. Going back to Atomy Particles, if I'm satisfied with the report, I can also export it to many different formats. I will start with the Visual Excel, which is one of our import and export formats. And Atomy Particles is just saving the data right now. What is worth mentioning is that Atomy Particles is a desktop application. It is really easy to be installed. It can be done within one day. And also, it can work both offline and online. And what is worth noting is that all the financial data, all the reported data is stored on your workstation. So if I open this exported file, I am presented with the table of content, as well as the information, where is the data. So this, I can see that there is some data here. And these are the numbers that I have put in Atomy Particles. I can add some more here. I can add also in other tables. And you can imagine easily someone who prefers working in Excels, having two monitors, and one opened with this type of Excel, second one with the validation errors, and working on it and correcting these errors. If I save it right now, I can import it back to Atomy Particles as a visual Excel. And this solution, what is also worth noting, is XBRL certified by XBRL International. So when there is a need to have this certification, we have it covered with our with Atomy Particles. And I have this imported report here with this 5,000 that I have put here in this in the visual Excel, and also with these numbers. But what's the most important is, of course, the XBRL. So let's go straight to XBRL export. So this is the format that you are sending straight to your regulator. And Atomy Particles is also checking once again this report and saving it in the standardized format and as an XBRL file. And this is exactly the type of report the type of format that you're sending to your regulator. And here are the numbers that I have put in Atomy Particles and in this visual Excel. But just to show you that Atomy Particles can handle also more, let's say, complex, maybe not complex reports, but reports with more reported information, I have prepared for the demo the same type of report, but with reported almost all of necessary data points. So I have here reported over 6,000 facts. So let's look how would it look in Atomy Particles, and how Atomy Particles would handle this type of report. And also I will need it to show you the last type of the technical format that Atomy Particles offers as an import and export from the application. So this is the same report that I opened previously, but as you can see, there is substantially more reported data in this report. And I can also export it to the data point list, which is our format used by customers mostly for the import and export from their databases, from their Excels, because as you can see, I have here in this data point list over 6,500 reported facts from the report, and it went really fast. So whenever you have like quite a lot of reported data points, you can easily use them in have them in a data point list and importing them back into Atomy Particles. So the last thing that I would like to mention is also that we are really quick in updating taxonomies, new frameworks. So just as example, I can give you the information that, for example, the IFD-IFR reporting framework, new framework from the EBA for investment firms, was published by the EBA on 10th of May, and we have it covered on 19th of May. Although it had quite substantial changes in the, and it was quite big. So that would be all from me. Thank you, Rina.
Thank you, Dominic, for an overview of the statistics reporting framework. So basically, when the new taxonomy is available, the filer will have all the reporting within one tool. We are moving to the questions and answers session of our webinar. So please send your questions to the chat function, and we will answer them straight away with our experts here. Okay, we have one question. What are the common mistakes in data validation? Wait, can you share your
Yeah, so this is definitely something that crops up a lot in the realm of XBRL, DPM, for sure. And actually, I've noted that with tools like Particles, over the last 3 or 4 years, I've noted that the main value that users derive from it is the sort of user interface for validations. It's that ability to just very quickly and visually and intuitively understand what a validation rule is actually saying. So we of course achieve that through the highlighting of cells that are in the Cartesian space that we have represented within Particles, so on the rows and columns, and then you're able to see multiple tables as well. So, I mean, a large mistake that I've noted throughout the years, firms that tend to struggle with validations are those that don't have tools that enable that kind of visualization, whether of course it be internal or they've gone externally to the market, and instead relying on sort of just the automated process that gets data over to the regulator, which is great and what you should absolutely be aiming for. But actually that manual intervention can be really valuable, and you want to do it as early as possible, as early as your data is available from production. Even if that data comes in segments, I'd recommend running validations on it as early as possible, particularly for new, when any updates have been done to the reporting framework. And then using validation results from the visual tools to raise queries with the regulator or your authority, whoever owns the data that you're submitting, to either increase your understanding of that validation if you don't firmly understand the reasoning behind it, or of course to challenge the validation if you disagree with it. But then ultimately to use all this knowledge you've gained that you are failing a validation, and if you've moved to the stage where you accept that yes, okay, that we understand why that validation exists, using that information to go as far back in your systems as you can to the source of this data or to the ETL, wherever it is reasonable and possible to correct what is the root cause for this validation. Do so. Make sure you're doing that between reporting rounds. It may not be possible in the current reporting round where you discover it. Maybe it's only 2 days before you have to submit, and then you have to make a manual adjustment for that one round. But make sure you then follow up and go back as far as you can. So it's kind of using everything that's available. It's all the feedback mechanisms that you can pay for, and it's actually using the regulator's experience and willingness to engage back when you raise a query.
Okay, thank you, Rich. Another question coming from the audience: how can data point list be used internally with database systems?
So this, so I noticed Tom mentioned this. So data point list is a relatively new format that we've created, and we've created it in lieu of CSV. And the reason we haven't used CSV, which of course it would be a much more standard format, recognizable format, is because actually so XBRL and the way that we're using it, that is being used for statistics reporting, has a few complexities that aren't easily covered with CSV, but also we run into trouble with column explosion and sort of the hard limits in things like XL on columns, which are much less than the hard limits on rows. And we're confident we'll never sort of run into the hard limits on rows, and if we do, we have a way around that. So the data point list is actually it's just flattening the data, defining it by things that exist in the taxonomy. So we aren't injecting any data there. We're just choosing what information that already is defined in the taxonomy to define it. And it's the minimal amount required to uniquely define every data point in every single reporting framework that exists across Europe that we support, of course. So there's a lot of different flavors of it. And the way that it's typically used, and the reason it's typically used, is because it's the format that's most easily producible by users' systems, because you don't have to worry about the Cartesian space so much. You just have to make sure you're getting the codes right, the table codes, the row codes, the column codes, and then you're pretty much done when you add the value in on top. Whereas, of course, automating a process from your backend systems that goes into a tabular format can be quite challenging, and it's particularly challenging when changes are made to the taxonomy. So it tends to be used by those who want to automate their processes as much as possible, but still want that kind of visual aid that a tool like Particles provides. Yeah, so that's the data point list in a nutshell.
Thanks, Rich. And another question from the audience. How are you reading the taxonomy? Is it from XSD or the annotated Excel files? And European Banking Authority provides the taxonomy in Access database.
Yeah, indeed. So lots of regulators provide lots of different formats along with their publications, but the only format that is consistently published is the XBRL. So we read the XBRL files when we're getting all of the structure into Particles. So that's the short answer to this. Of course, we do quality control. We know that sometimes in XBRL, things are defined in ways that actually aren't visually particularly helpful for users. And we can make some interventions there where we've got consistent feedback from user interviews and what have you. And sort of everyone broadly agrees, actually, this ordering's a bit off. And it makes no difference, of course, to the XBRL output. For those that know about XBRL in detail, you'll understand why. But no, we do use the actual XBRL source as a source. And this is the only way to guarantee that your files are going to be accepted by the regulator every time, first time. And so this is what we do. Now, for the validations, it's a little different because there are validations that aren't supported in XBRL, but the regulators do check. I'm not certain if statistics framework is going down this route yet, but anything that goes like across form or across time period or outside of one single instance file cannot be performed within XBRL, within the standard. But we do look to support these rules. So we look to multiple sources to support validation rules. And this is why it's not automated in an instant. This is why, and where this is the main value proposition for our users, we spend some time and use some of our knowledge to make sure the validations are implemented to as high a coverage as is actually possible, and also are correct and understandable by the user.
Okay, thanks, Rich. And with this new changes coming to reporting statistics in XBRL, does this mean that the filer needs XBRL skills in-house for stats reporting?
No, not at all. This is a common misconception, and it's usually a mistake to kind of source those skills, particularly. They're first of all, they're pretty limited in the market, like actual XBRL, like hardcore XBRL skills. But if you purchase a tool that produces XBRL or that does the validations for you, there's no reason to have that kind of technical knowledge in-house at all. That's what these tools are for, of course. It's all done under the hood and very quickly. And it's only the policy information that you need. You need to understand, the data requirements, of course. You need to understand how it's being asked to be reported, but these will be with the forms that your policy folks in your data departments are familiar with, and your reporting departments are familiar with. So it's more about sort of the green notices and policy statements than it is about having the understanding of taxonomies and all the technical stuff. If you go with a solution like this, that's all, the secondary value proposition on top of providing intuitive and visual validation information. Also, you don't need XBRL skills in-house if you have tools like these.
Okay, thanks, Rich. And another question coming in. Can your system help banks map their data to a unique model from which XBRL files can be generated for both statistical and prudential taxonomies? Or are templates a first mandatory step?
So it's an interesting question. I'm not certain I fully understand this, so I'm just going to state some assumptions in my answer. I mean, my broad answer is no, not really. Particles is not really used on the that end-to-end early stage of mapping. You said unique model, which I assume you mean bespoke to the filer, to the bank, or whatever institution is actually reporting to the, in this case, Bank of England, EBA models. The system definitely won't do that for you. This is very much so a last mile system. This is for exporting XBRL once you have your data already aggregated, calculated, and put into a format that can be imported to Particles, which is XBRL or one of the XLs we demonstrated. But this is something that you may want to address. It might be, if I'm being honest, it might be a little difficult at the moment to map your internal systems both to prudential data reporting requirements and statistics reporting requirements. I think we're pretty early on that road at the moment. So the policies aren't necessarily aligned yet that underpin everything. So of course, policies come first at the moment from the Bank of England, then the DPM is kind of the secondary factor. I know there are considerations that might change this ordering of things, but I would urge a little caution in this approach. It might be a pretty valuable proof of concept to run and to see how far you get and what challenges come back. And if you do that, you should definitely submit your findings in the as honest a way as possible to the Bank of England, because that will be of interest to them. But I would urge a little caution for jumping in on that being your primary method here.
Okay, thank you. And another question coming from the audience: does Particles enable the creation of test data?
Yeah, of course. So, I mean, there are many ways of doing this. You can export blank templates to Excel, as we showed, either the visual one with all the templates that you're familiar with, or you could compute data point lists with all the ordinates and everything, and you can use Excel or some other system to generate random numbers, and then export an XBRL. You can test it as you need that way. But actually, we've so hopefully in a release tomorrow, actually, we are releasing some alpha functionality where you will be able to generate randomized test data from Particles, and that can be either with zeros or for the values to be between parameters that you've set, like random values between parameters that you've set for different types of metrics. You'll have different parameters. So with dates, of course, you'd have different parameters than you would with a monetary value. But yeah, this is alpha functionality, so it's currently available to all users in Particles. We'll be moving up. We'll be progressing that functionality and adding more value as we go. The ultimate aim for us is to be able to allow the user to specify what validations to fail or pass in the test data. Right now, it's just complete random, so it's probably going to fail on most validations, but it will be XBRL valid, if you will, but it won't be valid from business rules. But over time, we're going to look to sort of add more and more utility to that. So the answer to that is very much a yes, and actually, as of tomorrow, in quite a succinct way and quite easily, you'll be able to do that.
Okay, understood. Thanks, Rich. Thank you for sharing your expertise and such an interesting discussion. And I think we're reaching to the end of our webinar. So I think that would be the last question to discuss today. Please note that a copy of all the questions with the answers will be sent to you after the webinar. And also, if any of your questions had not been answered today or some other questions will come up after the webinar, please kindly pass them via email, and we will get back to you within the next few days with an answer. And I would like to thank all of our audience for joining in today, and many thanks to our experts, Michał, Rich, Dominic. Thanks for sharing your expertise and insights. Thank you all, and have a nice day.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you.